Story 1. At Jim Henson's funeral, Big Bird sings, "It isn't easy being green." At one point, the performer's voice cracks, and I'm now crying just thinking about it. Story 2. Lover, You Should Have Come Over by Jeff Buckley. If I lived 1,000 lifetimes, I still wouldn't be able to write such a poignant song about heartbreak. Story 3. Taps being played on Memorial Day while standing in the cemetery near my uncle's grave. It's more than him being killed in the Vietnam War. It's knowing that my family had to wait over 20 years for his remains to be returned so they could give him a proper burial. Story 4. Eva Cassidy's cover of Fields of Gold. She is a gem anyway, and it is a sad enough song as is, but the song was used in an advertisement for the cancer research charity in the United Kingdom, which was aired at the same time my granddad was dying from cancer. This would have been when I was probably 9 or 10. Always reminds me of those times. Story 5. Nothing Compares to You, Sinead O'Connor, Cry Buckets. Also, Bonnie Raitt's I Can't Make You Love Me. It really hits my emotions. There were breakups happening when they came out too. Story 6. Fire and Rain. It always made me sad, but after I heard the story behind it and lost my mother, whose name is Suzanne, I sob every single time I hear it. I was lucky enough to see James Taylor earlier this year, and he played that as an encore. My best friend from high school, who accompanied me to the concert, has seen him several times before. When she looked over at me and saw me sobbing, she remembered what my mom's name is and was also moved to the same point. Story 7. Sinead O'Connor, This Is to Mother You. My mother is an abusive narcissist who has brought me nothing but pain and misery. Lies, gaslighting, and violence. I heard this song randomly on the radio back in 1997, and when it came on in my mother's car, I forced her to be quiet and listen. I've never really spoken to her like that before, so I think she was shocked into submission. She was in the process of emigrating at the time. Before she left, she gave me the CD of this song. To this day, I don't know if she really understood it, but it breaks my heart to hear it. I wish I had a real mother. Story 8. Streets of Philadelphia by Bruce Springsteen. Anyone who saw the movie and grew up knowing people with human immunodeficiency virus/acquired immunodeficiency syndrome in the 1980s, or even in one of the risk groups, will remember how scary and worrying that time was. Story 9. One song that always brings me to tears is Fast Car by Tracy Chapman. It reminds me of my younger days, dreaming of escape and a better life. The raw emotion in her voice, combined with the lyrics about longing, hope, and heartbreak, takes me back to a time when I felt lost but hopeful. Story 10. Absolutely unconventional answer. Nat King Cole's version of Oh Holy Night. Not because of any of the religious themes, but strictly because his voice is so beautiful, and the song showcases it perfectly. I get choked up every time. Story 11. Someone Like You by Adele. Story 12. The River by Bruce Springsteen is truly a masterpiece in storytelling. The highs and lows, hopes and failures we follow along to endure in only 5 minutes are astounding. It breaks me every time, not just from sadness, but also from hope. Talk about the quintessential human experience. Story 13. Weekend in New England by Barry Manilow. I just lost my baby to a miscarriage and was sitting in the tub, depressed, and this song came on. The words just hit me right in my heart. And tell me, when will our eyes meet? When can I touch you? When will this strong yearning end? And when will I hold you again? I lost it, and I sat and listened to it on repeat for over half an hour before my husband came to check on me, and I was just bawling. Ever since then, that song reminds me of that moment, and I cry. Story 14. Elephant by Jason Isbell. It's about him taking care of his girlfriend while she's dying of cancer, which is the elephant in the room. She said, "Andy, you're better than your past," winked at me and drained her glass, cross-legged on a bar stool, like nobody sits anymore. She said, "Andy, you're taking me home," but I knew she planned to sleep alone. I'd carry her to bed, sweep up the hair from her floor. If I'd loved her before she got sick, I'd never hear the end of it. She doesn't have the spirit for that now. We just drink our drinks and laugh out loud and complain about the weekend crowd and try to ignore the elephant somehow. somehow. She said, Andy, you crack me up. Seagrams in a coffee cup, sharecropper eyes, and the hair almost all gone. When she was drunk, she made cancer jokes, made up her own doctor's notes. Surrounded by her family, I saw that she was dying alone. But I'd sing her classic country songs, and she'd get high and sing along. She doesn't have a voice to sing with now. We burn these joints in effigy and cry about what we used to be and try to ignore the elephant somehow. I've buried her 1,000 times, given up my place in line, but I don't give a damn about that now. There's one thing that's real clear to me. No one dies with dignity. We just try to ignore the elephant somehow. We just try to ignore the elephant somehow. We just try to ignore the elephant somehow. Story 15. How far I'll go from the Moana soundtrack gets me every time. The optimism and the desire to triumph for some reason makes me feel very emotional, but in a good way. Story 16. Leaves from the vine, falling so slow, like fragile tiny shells, drifting in the foam. Little soldier boy, come marching home. Brave soldier boy, come marching home. Story 17. Just Give Me a Reason by Pink. I was just teaching that song to my African Grey when it came out, and he passed away. I can't hear it anymore without crying. Story 18. I don't listen to Whiskey Lullaby anymore. I haven't listened to it since I quit drinking, so maybe it won't put me in a don't want to be here mood, if you know what I mean. It hits directly home. Though I didn't catch them in the act, their daughter is a constant reminder of it. But my gosh, she is a sweetheart. Her existence is bittersweet to me. She's loved by her mother and half-siblings. They're still good in all that happened. Story 19. My partner was obsessed with The Greatest Showman, and a few months after its release, he took his life. I can't listen to Never Enough from the movie without crying. Story 20. The Dance by Garth Brooks and Go Rest High on That Mountain by Vince Gill. Both played at my dad's funeral. The beginning of the dance immediately makes me cry. I miss my dad more than anything. Story 21. Every time I hear it, I become an emotional mess. I don't know why this song hits me so hard. What I know is that this song is the most beautiful song of all time, and I wouldn't skip a single note in my life. Story 22. We Are the Champions. My uncle used to love that song, constantly singing it and listening to it. My last interaction with him was recording him singing it before he died. Story 23. Somewhere Only We Know by Keane. Hits me in the feels. My Immortal by Evanescence. I cannot help but think of her while listening to this song. And Rare All Times by the Dubliners. I have a fond memory of singing it with my grandma before she passed. Story 24. Leave a Light On. One of my friends overdosed. We promised each other never to let the other stray that far again. And if they did, there would always be a way back home. Story 25. Hurt. Operator. Time in a Bottle, Bohemian Rhapsody. She's Gone. November Rain. Miss Misery. Everywhere at the End of Time. Glimpse of Us. 21 Guns. Imagine. Till My Guitar Gently Weeps. Be Yourself. Like a Stone. Shadow on the Sun. Almost Blue. Everyone's Changing. Chasing Cars. I Won't Give Up. 4th of July. Fire and Rain. Your Time Has Come. Endless List. Story 26. For me, it's Tears in Heaven by Eric Clapton. Every time I hear it, I'm a puddle on the floor. It's like the universe decided to pack all the feelings into one song. I'm just waiting for my neighbors to knock and ask if I'm okay. Guess I'll have to keep my crying playlist on the down low. What about you? Any songs that turn you into an emotional mess? Story 27. Both Sides Now by Joni Mitchell. I heard it for the first time at the end of the Afterlife series, and it took me by surprise with the context of the finale. Story 28. Andrea Bocelli, Con te partiro. Favorite song of my great uncle and the mother of my mom. All Croatians. Never got to know my grandma sadly, but my mom told me that song was playing at the funeral. Dire Straits' Brothers in Arms. Favorite song of my mom. Hurt Stay. Incredible melody. Snow Patrol Chasing Cars. Teenage Memories. Mr. Blackberry Molasses. Tupac fans understand. Story 29. I only found out maybe a few years ago that the full song is actually about being in love with someone who doesn't feel the same. Until then, I had only ever heard the chorus. Didn't even know there was more to the song. Thought it was basically a short lullaby. Anyway, to me that chorus always sounded like someone declaring that they were so in love with another person and worried that the other person would leave them or pass away or something. This always struck a chord with me. But my daughter, my first child, was born last week. I found myself singing this to her while I was holding her and started sobbing. I can't even think about the lyrics while also thinking about her without crying. Story 30. The Book of Love by Peter Gabriel. It was going to be the first dance song at my wedding that never happened. I am over it now, but it still punches me in the heart. It is so beautiful. Story 31. Heard it plenty when I was younger, but it hit me like a brick after my best friend found his mother dead. It was our junior year in high school. She was a second mom to me. We were always getting into some sort of mischief, but after that, I knew he was going to go down a hard road. I loved him like a brother. Haven't heard from him in 15 years. I couldn't help him and had to save myself. Story 32. How to Save a Life by The Fray. Mainly because it's one of those songs that helped me through so much and that kept me from doing things I am glad I didn't. Story 33. Puff the Magic Dragon. I played it for my son newly postpartum. I didn't remember it being such a sad song. My husband was confused when he found us both sobbing in bed. Story 34. Comfortably Numb. There is no pain, you are receding. A distant ship. Smoke on the horizon. You are only coming through in waves. Your lips move, but I can't hear what you're saying. When I was a child, I caught a fleeting glimpse. Out of the corner of my eye, I turned to look, but it was gone. Cannot put my finger on it now. The child is grown, the dream is gone. I have become comfortably numb. Story 35. If I'm anywhere near tears, they're coming when he says, "Thank you for your time. You've been so much more than kind." Because I relate to being in serious pain and still put on the most polite version of myself. It isn't even wrong, but it hurts so much. Story 36. Monsters by James Blunt is my most recent weeper. Then the classic Israel Kemikawiwole and Eva Cassidy double gut punch of Somewhere Over the Rainbow. Both epic but devastating covers. Story 37. Everything I Own. My 42-year-old daughter was murdered in 2022. That was the day the music died too. I haven't turned my car radio on or listened to any music. I sing goofy songs to my dog. Story 38. Sitting on the Dock of the Bay, Otis Redding. It was playing when I answered the phone and heard the news my favorite aunt had passed. The person on the other side of the phone didn't realize my 10-year-old voice sounded exactly like my mother's. I was not prepared for that news, and every time the song comes on, I am reminded of myself standing with the yellow phone receiver in hand, just frozen with grief. Who started cutting onions? Damn it. Story 39. I got word my dad was close to dying and rushed back to the hospital. I had been there a few days and went to sleep for a few hours, and on the way, this song came on the radio. I just knew it was him sending this song to say he loved me as he was circling around to check on all his people. I just knew he would be gone when I arrived 10 minutes later, and sure enough, he had already just passed. Every time I hear it, I cry because it is his way to remind me of how loved I was. Story 40. Eminem's songs on his most recent album, Save Me and Temporary. Save Me gets to me because, although my dad isn't dead, he suffers from a drug addiction. I wish I could save him, and that one night I could go to sleep and wake up to being in one big happy family. Temporary affects me because the man who tried to step up and fill my dad's shoes, whom I saw as a father figure, died when I was 16 in a motorcycle accident. Story 41. He Stopped Loving Her Today by George Jones. Can't even. Makes me ugly cry every time. As soon as I hear the first lines, I have to turn it off or remove myself from the room. Story 42. Go Rest High on That Mountain by Vince Gill. The first big loss in my life was my great aunt, and she loved Vince Gill. She was also my Sunday school teacher for my entire childhood. Rest in peace. Story 43. To Build a Home, the Cinematic Orchestra and Patrick Watson. never fails to exacerbate my sadness when I'm already emotional, at the brink of drowning in tears. Story 44. The Needle and the Damage Done by Neil Young. My husband does a very good rendition of this on guitar, and there have been times when I've had to ask him to stop playing it because I get so depressed. It's the same with him doing The Times They Are A-Changin' by Bob Dylan. It makes me want to harm myself. A weird compliment to my husband's abilities and the original artist's songwriting. For sure. Story 45. If I ever leave this world alive, flogging Molly. My best friend fought a rare cancer for close to 13 years and finally had enough. Flogging Molly was one of our favorite bands to jam to in high school. I almost made it through the whole thing playing it this summer around the campfire. Still choked up a bit. Story 46. True Love Waits. Radiohead. Hard listen after learning about his wife's cancer. Daydreaming Radiohead. Also a hard listen but beautifully creative and soul-wrenching song. Story 47. You Will Be in My Heart by Phil Collins. Such a beautiful song with powerful lyrics. When my daughter was 5, she took a ballet class, and at the end of the year, the school had a showcase. Her class did a simple but beautifully choreographed ballet to this song. Seeing my little girl be brave and get up on stage dancing to this song with lyrics about love and protection and keeping someone safe still makes me tear up just thinking about it. Story 48. Daddy by Korn gets me emotional when he starts crying and screaming angrily, I hate you, and you ruined my life. It's a disturbing song about child abuse. Believe it or not, the lead singer's cries are of real emotional pain and real tears, as he was sexually abused when he was a child by a babysitter. He says she is dead now, so karma is a burden, and his parents didn't believe him about it. It's not actually about his dad sexually abusing him, as the song makes out. After the recording, the band members went to comfort Jonathan Davis after he broke down in tears over reliving his past trauma with child abuse. It's hard for me to listen to that song and not feel emotional about it, especially when Jonathan Davis starts crying.